Your boss doesn't control you by orders. They control you by psychology, promotions, praise, silence. None of it is accidental. Today, you'll begin to see something most people never notice in their entire working lives. Power at work is rarely exercised through commands. It's exercised through design, a design that shapes how you think, what you hope for, and what you're afraid to lose. And once this design is in place, you don't need to be forced. You cooperate. Power at work is never loud. It's subtle, strategic, invisible. Machiavelli understood something centuries ago that still governs offices, corporations, and institutions today. True authority doesn't demand loyalty. It manufactures compliance. In this chapter, you're going to step behind the curtain and see how intelligent leaders manipulate perception, ambition, and fear to stay in control, without threats, without pressure, and without you ever realizing it. Welcome to the Prince's Doctrine. One of the greatest psychological tricks ever played on ambitious people is the belief that control must feel forceful. That if no one is shouting, if no one is threatening, if no one is openly dominating, then no one is in control. This belief is wrong. In fact, the more invisible the control feels, the more effective it is. History proves this again and again. Take Louis XIV of France, the Sun King. He did not rule through constant violence. Instead, he created Versailles, a court so elaborate, so psychologically engineered, that nobles destroyed themselves competing for proximity, approval, and symbolic favor. He didn't imprison them. He occupied their minds. They obsessed over where they stood, how they were seen, and whether they were rising or falling in status. Modern workplaces operate the same way, just with better lighting and HR policies. You're not controlled by chains. You're controlled by hope. Here's something uncomfortable. The smartest bosses do not want obedience. They want initiative that moves in the direction they prefer. This is why they rarely give you clear, rigid instructions. Instead, they provide vague expectations, broad goals, flexible definitions of success. Why? Because clarity limits control. When expectations are vague, you fill the gap with effort, anxiety, and overthinking. You work harder, not because you were told to, but because you want to align. This tactic was perfected long before corporate offices existed. In ancient China, legalist philosophers advised rulers to keep laws intentionally ambiguous. Why? Because ambiguity forces people to police themselves. When the rules are unclear, people behave cautiously, and caution is obedience. Your boss doesn't need to watch you. You watch yourself. Every organization has two structures, the one on paper and the one that actually matters. The real hierarchy is psychological. At the top are those who define meaning. They decide what counts as valuable work. They decide what behavior is praised. They decide what silence means. Below them are the interpreters, people who constantly try to decode signals, moods, pauses, and reactions. And at the bottom are the reactive, those who live in fear of falling out of favor, constantly adjusting, apologizing, and proving. Smart bosses identify your category within weeks, not by your skills, but by your emotional responses. Do you seek reassurance? Do you over-explain? Do you light up when praised? These are not neutral traits. They are data points. And once your boss understands your psychology, control becomes effortless. Most people expect manipulation to feel hostile. That's why they miss it when it comes wrapped in warmth. Strategic kindness is one of the most powerful tools in any leader's arsenal. A well-timed compliment. A moment of, "I believe in you." A private conversation that feels personal. These gestures don't create loyalty. They create obligation. In feudal Japan, powerful lords often spared defeated enemies, not out of mercy, but strategy. Gratitude binds more tightly than fear. A spared life creates a psychological debt that chains a man stronger than iron. The modern version is professional grace. You're given understanding when you mess up, flexibility when you fall short, support when you struggle, and slowly, unconsciously, you begin to think, I owe them. From that moment on, your decisions are no longer fully yours. Nothing creates anxiety faster than silence. When feedback disappears, when messages go unanswered, when reactions become unreadable, your mind fills the void. Silence forces interpretation, and interpretation creates dependence. Historically, this was a tactic of emperors and popes. Access was controlled. Responses were delayed. Ambassadors waited weeks for replies, not because leaders were busy, but because anticipation magnified authority. In modern offices, silence works the same way. A delayed reply after you submit work, a neutral reaction instead of praise, a meeting where your contribution isn't acknowledged. Your performance didn't change, but your certainty did, and uncertainty is fertile ground for control. At some point, something subtle happens. You realize you're working harder, but feeling less secure. You're achieving more, but feeling less respected. You're chasing clarity, but receiving ambiguity. That's the moment awareness begins. Not anger, not rebellion. Awareness. This chapter isn't meant to make you paranoid. It's meant to make you conscious. Because the most dangerous position in any power structure is not the bottom. It's the unaware middle. The one who believes effort alone guarantees safety. The one who mistakes movement for progress. And the one who thinks power is loud, obvious, and aggressive. It's not. Power is quiet. And now, you've started to hear it. We'll expose the 5 dark manipulation tricks smart bosses use daily. Not to dominate you openly, but to guide you exactly where they want you to go. Once you see them, they can't unsee you. And once you understand them, you stop being a pawn. Now that you understand how power hides, it's time to expose how it operates. Not in theory, not in textbooks, but in real behavior. The kind you experience every week and never question. These are not management techniques. They are psychological weapons, and the reason they work is simple. They don't feel like manipulation. The smartest bosses never fully define success. They give you goals, but not standards. Tasks, but not boundaries. Praise, but not patterns. Why? Because certainty creates independence. Uncertainty creates dependence. When expectations shift subtly, you're forced to constantly adjust. You replay conversations. You analyze tone. You guess what good enough means this time. This is not incompetence. It's design. The Roman Senate mastered this tactic. Senators were kept unsure of favor, status, and future appointments. No one knew where they stood, and that uncertainty kept them compliant, alert, and eager to please. At work, the result is the same. You work harder than necessary to avoid falling into the unknown. An anxious mind is a controllable mind. Praise is not given when you deserve it. It's given when it's useful. Smart bosses understand something most people don't. Consistent rewards lose power. Inconsistent rewards create obsession. This principle comes from behavioral psychology and casinos. When praise is unpredictable, your brain treats it like a win. You don't just enjoy it. You chase it. A compliment after weeks of silence hits harder than regular appreciation. A promotion almost within reach keeps you compliant longer than one you already earned. Historically, monarchs used titles the same way. Knighthoods, ranks, honors, never too many, never too fast. Enough to keep hope alive, enough to keep you waiting. Notice something interesting. Your boss rarely says, "I decided." They say, "Leadership wants this." Company policy says, "This is just how things are." Power is most effective when it appears impersonal. By hiding behind systems, culture, or intermediaries, smart bosses avoid emotional backlash while maintaining control. In medieval empires, rulers used ministers to deliver bad news. The ruler remained respected. The enforcer absorbed resentment. Modern bosses do the same. They don't confront. They redirect. This keeps their image clean and your resistance misdirected. You don't fight a person. You fight the air. And you lose. This one feels good, which is why it's dangerous. A boss takes interest in you, asks about your goals, your weaknesses, your fears. It feels supportive, but information is power. Every insecurity you reveal becomes a pressure point. Every ambition becomes a lever. Every doubt becomes a way to steer you. In Renaissance courts, advisors gained influence not through force, but intimacy. Kings confided, advisors remembered. Later, they guided decisions for your own good. At work, false mentorship works the same way. You think you're being helped. In reality, you're being mapped. The more available someone is, the less powerful they appear. Smart bosses understand this instinctively. They delay responses. They limit availability. They control access to themselves, not because they're busy, but because scarcity increases perceived value. This tactic was used by emperors, popes, and generals. Access was power. Proximity was privilege. In modern workplaces, it shows up as waiting days for replies, brief controlled interactions, meetings that end early. And without realizing it, you adjust your behavior to earn attention. You lean in. They lean back. That imbalance is authority. Because none of them feel aggressive. They don't trigger resistance. They don't provoke rebellion. They operate below awareness. By the time you feel frustrated, the system is already in place. And here's the hard truth. Most people don't fail because they lack skill. They fail because they never learned how power actually moves. But awareness alone is not enough. If you only see manipulation, you become bitter. If you understand it, you become untouchable. You'll learn how to detach emotionally, to reverse manipulation silently, and build leverage so control no longer works on you. Because the goal isn't to become ruthless. It's to stop being usable. By now, something should feel different. Not angry, not excited, clear. Because once you see manipulation for what it is, you stop taking it personally. And that's the first step toward power. Every system of control begins in the same place: emotion. Your boss doesn't manage your work first. They manage your reactions. Disappointment, hope, anxiety, eagerness. These are levers. That's why the most dangerous person in any hierarchy is not the loud rebel, but the emotionally neutral observer. History favors the detached. Ottoman court officials survived brutal political shifts not by loyalty or brilliance, but by emotional restraint. They reacted slowly, spoke carefully, revealed nothing. Emotion creates predictability. Predictability creates control. When praise doesn't inflate you and silence doesn't destabilize you, manipulation loses its grip. Smart bosses read people like maps. They watch faces, tone shifts, micro reactions. They're not listening to your words. They're watching your exposure. So you learn to close the windows. You don't overshare ambition. You don't vent frustration upward. You don't explain insecurity. You respond, but don't reveal. In ancient courts, survival depended on opacity. Those who revealed desire were used. Those who revealed fear were removed. Your calm becomes confusing, and confusion breaks patterns. Direct resistance is for the powerless. Power moves sideways. Instead of opposing authority, you absorb it. You comply, but precisely. You deliver, but without emotional investment. You follow instructions without adding yourself to them. This does two things. First, it removes friction. Second, it makes you unreadable. Manipulation needs reaction. When reaction disappears, control weakens. You're no longer pushing against the current. You're standing still while it passes. Visibility is not power. Leverage is. The most secure figures in history were never the loudest. They were the ones who controlled resources, information, or timing. You stop trying to be impressive. You become necessary. You learn things others ignore. You connect systems quietly. You hold context no one else sees. And you never announce it. Power protects what it depends on. When your value isn't obvious, but removal would cause disruption, control reverses. Approval seeking is the easiest behavior to exploit. A person who needs validation can be steered endlessly. Smart bosses sense it immediately. They delay praise. They ration recognition. They let you chase. The moment you stop seeking approval, your posture changes. You're no longer negotiating for validation. You're deciding what you tolerate. That shift is felt instantly, not consciously, instinctively. Here's the paradox. The goal was never to manipulate back. That keeps you in the game. True mastery is choice. You know when power is being applied. You recognize the tactics, and you decide, calmly, whether to engage. Sometimes you play, sometimes you withdraw, sometimes you let the system collapse under its own weight. Machiavelli understood this. The highest form of power is not domination. It's independence from influence. Most people live their entire careers reacting to praise, reacting to silence, reacting to pressure. You don't need to dominate anyone. You only need to stop being usable. And once you do, the game changes. Welcome to the Prince's Doctrine.